Sunflower dreams. The sun, a gentler version of itself this early in the morning, kissed Lily's cheeks as she walked among her sunflowers. Their heavy heads, laden with seeds, followed the sun's trajectory, a silent, golden chorus. She ran a calloused hand over a particularly robust bloom, its petals the color of spun honey. This year's crop was promising, maybe even prize-winning. Abuela Elena would have been so proud. Humph! A voice like gravel on asphalt startled her. Mrs. Beatrice Crabtree stood on the other side of the weathered fence, her lips pursed tighter than a miser's purse. Rodriguez girl, those weeds are practically touching my petunias. Honestly, the untidiness of this place is simply appalling. Lily sighed, the sweetness of the morning momentarily soured. They're sunflowers, Mrs. Crabtree. And they aren't weeds. They're thriving. Thriving chaos, more like it. This isn't some backwater farm, you know. We have standards in this community. And those sunflowers, they attract bees. My prize-winning roses were nearly stung to death last summer thanks to your agricultural experiment. Mrs. Crabtree's voice rose with each complaint, her face reddening. Lily bit back a sharp retort. Abuela Elena always said, kindness disarms even the sharpest tongue. But it was getting harder and harder to be kind. She remembered Abuela Elena's stories of sunflowers, how they were a symbol of hope and resilience, how their seeds held the promise of new beginnings. She felt a familiar tightening in her chest. This land, these sunflowers, were more than just a hobby. They were a legacy, a connection to her past. I'll make sure they don't encroach on your property, Mrs. Crabtree, Lily said, forcing a smile. Mrs. Crabtree sniffed, unconvinced. See that you do. And perhaps consider a less rustic aesthetic next year. Something more in keeping with the neighborhood. With a final glare, she turned and marched back towards her meticulously manicured lawn, leaving Lily alone with her sunflowers and a growing unease. The sun felt a little less warm now. The leaky problem? The water bill was outrageous. Lily stared at the number on the screen, the pit in her stomach deepening with each digit. Double the usual amount? That couldn't be right. She'd been extra careful with watering the sunflowers this month, knowing the dry heat was relentless. A quick check of the meter confirmed her fear. It was spinning, even though nothing inside the house was running. That meant a leak. Panic gnawed at her. Where? She followed the buried pipe's path along the edge of the property, her heart sinking with every step. Finally, near the far corner, she found it. A steady stream was erupting from a rusted joint, turning the earth to mud. Not a dribble, but a forceful spray, a miniature geyser wasting precious water. Lily's jaw tightened. All that water, needlessly gushing into the parched earth. The waste infuriated her more than the cost. Something had to be done, and fast. She knew what she had to do next, but it wouldn't be pleasant. Turning off the main valve meant no water for anything, not even a quick rinse of her dusty hands. It would be a significant inconvenience, but the thought of all that water gurgling into the ground spurred her into action. With a sigh, she grabbed her wrench and headed towards the valve. Here we go, she muttered to herself, bracing for the inevitable struggle. Crabtree's complaint. Mrs. Crabtree materialized like a summer heat mirage, shimmering into focus just as Lily straightened up from the water valve. The older woman's face was a tight knot of displeasure. Just what do you think you're doing, young lady? She demanded, her voice sharp enough to chip paint. Lily held up the wrench, its metal still cool against her palm. There's a leak, Mrs. Crabtree. I was just turning off the water so I could fix it. A leak? A leak you caused, no doubt. All that jungle you call a garden is probably straining the pipes something awful. She gestured dismissively at Lily's sunflowers, their yellow heads bobbing gently in the afternoon breeze. And don't think I haven't noticed the way those weeds are encroaching on my petunias. They're looking quite peaky indeed. Lily sighed. The metallic tang of the wrench suddenly bit her on her tongue. Mrs. Crabtree, I assure you, my sunflowers aren't responsible for the water leak. And I've been careful to keep them within my property lines. Careful? Huh. I saw you watering them the other day. Soaking them. You're probably using all the water pressure. That's why my roses are looking so droopy. I expect you to compensate me for the damage to my prize-winning Belinda's dream. And get rid of those monstrosities. They're an eyesore, a blight on this entire development. Mrs. Crabtree's voice rose with each sentence, a gathering storm of indignation. Water thief. Mrs. Crabtree stood on the edge of Lily's property, her floral dress a splash of gaudy color against the dry, browning grass. Those sunflowers are a menace, Lily. A menace, I say. taking up all the water, blocking the sun from my prize-winning petunias. Her voice, sharp as shattered glass, carried on the afternoon breeze. Lily sighed, the sound barely audible. Mrs. Crabtree, I water them sparingly, mostly with rainwater I collect. She gestured to the overflowing barrels tucked behind the shed. Rainwater? Huh. You think I'm a fool, girl? The HOA newsletter clearly stated we're experiencing a drought emergency. No excessive watering allowed. Mrs. Crabtree puffed out her chest, her eyes narrowed. You're stealing water, Lily Rodriguez. Stealing from the community. That's absurd. Lily's temper flared, a spark in her usually calm demeanor. I pay my water bill just like everyone else, and I'm hardly using enough to cause a drought. The air, thick with the scent of dry earth and simmering frustration, crackled between them. Don't you sass me, young lady. I've lived here longer than you've been alive, and I know a water thief when I see one. Those monstrous flowers are sucking the life out of everything. Mrs. Crabtree pointed a trembling finger at the vibrant yellow blooms, a distorted narrative blooming in her mind, nourished by spite and suspicion. Lily felt a wave of helplessness wash over her, the absurdity of the situation almost comical if it weren't so infuriating. How could someone be so willfully blind to reason? 9-1 What? Lily ignored Mrs. Crabtree's shrill voice and knelt by the leaky pipe, wrench in hand. Water trickled down her arm as she tightened the coupling. Just gotta cinch this right here. I'm telling you, those sunflowers are a menace. They're attracting aphids that are attacking my prize-winning petunias. Mrs. Crabtree's voice ratcheted up an octave. The scent of her rose perfume, usually cloying, was now laced with pure vinegar. Lily gritted her teeth. They're native sunflowers, Mrs. Crabtree. The bees love them. Bees also sting. And look at all the deadheading you aren't doing. It's unsightly. Unsightly, I say. She punctuated the last word with a jab of her finger. Lily sighed, wiping grime on her jeans. I'll get to it. Just trying to fix this leak before we all have no water pressure. Mrs. Crabtree huffed, then whipped out her phone. I've had enough. I'm calling the authorities. Lily snorted, finally getting the coupling snug. The authorities? For what? A leaky pipe and some sunflowers? Mrs. Crabtree's voice dripped with saccharine sweetness as she spoke into the phone. Yes, hello, 911? I'm being harassed and intimidated on my property. Yes, by a neighbor. She's creating a nuisance and, well, I fear for my safety. And my roses. She paused, listening. Yes, I want to press charges. Lily's jaw dropped. 9-1. What? Mrs. Crabtree, are you serious right now? I'm fixing a pipe. The wrench slipped from her suddenly numb fingers, clattering on the dry earth. Police arrive. The wail of sirens sliced through the afternoon air, growing louder until a patrol car, lights flashing a dizzying red and blue, crunched to a halt at the curb. Two officers emerged, looking rumpled and slightly bored, their gazes sweeping over the scene. Mrs. Crabtree, arms crossed triumphantly over her floral print dress, puffed out her chest. Officer, she shrieked, before they could even reach the sidewalk. Thank heavens you're here. This woman is a menace, a danger to the entire neighborhood. Lily, who had been silently fuming, stepped forward, hands open in a gesture of bewildered innocence. Ma'am, I was just watering my sunflowers. Mrs. Crabtree's face contorted. Watering? She's flooding. Deliberately drowning my prize-winning petunias. And those monstrosities. They're attracting vermin, I tell you. Vermin. She pointed a trembling finger at the towering sunflowers, their heavy heads nodding in the gentle breeze. One of the officers, a young man with a neatly trimmed mustache, raised an eyebrow. He glanced from the sunflowers to the meticulously manicured petunias, then back to Lily, who was now sporting a bewildered expression. The other officer, a woman with a weary look in her eyes, pulled out a notepad. Ma'am, can you please state your name and the nature of your complaint? Beatrice Crabtree, she announced, as if bestowing a title. And the nature of my complaint is horticultural terrorism. I demand this woman be arrested. Proof and sunflowers. Lily exhaled slowly, a puff of controlled annoyance. Proof? She asked, raising an eyebrow at Mrs. Crabtree, who stood rigidly beside the two officers, her floral dress a stark contrast to the dusty ranch landscape. Right. Proof. She turned and walked back into the house, returning moments later with a crisp water bill. She presented it to the taller officer, Officer Miller, who examined it with a professional detachment. Mrs. Crabtree sputtered, something about wasting police time, but Lily ignored her. Officer Miller handed the bill to his partner, Officer Jones, who glanced at it, then his gaze drifted. He seemed to notice the sunflowers for the first time, a vibrant yellow explosion against the muted browns and greens of the ranch. "Wow," he said, almost to himself. "Those are impressive." Mrs. Crabtree huffed. "Impressive mess, more like it. They're blocking the sun from my prize-winning petunias and the seeds are attracting things." Officer Jones, however, was walking closer to the sunflowers, his hand hovering near a massive head bowed heavy with seeds. "These are Russian mammoths, right? I tried growing them once, but they never got this big. What's your secret?" He turned to Lily, a genuine curiosity replacing the professional mask. Lily felt a small smile tug at her lips. Good soil, plenty of water, and a whole lot of sunshine. She glanced pointedly at Mrs. Crabtree, who was now beet red. Officer Miller cleared his throat, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "Ma'am," he said to Mrs. Crabtree, his voice gentle but firm, "I think we understand the situation. Perhaps we can all find a way to coexist peacefully. Rose advice. And those sunflowers, officer," Mrs. Crabtree continued, her voice still sharp enough to cut glass, "are a menace. A menace, I tell you. Blocking the sunlight from my prize-winning petunias. And the seeds. The birds are scattering them everywhere. I'll have sunflowers sprouting in my rose beds next. It's simply not on." The officer, a young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, shifted his weight. "Right, ma'am." Speaking of roses, Mrs. Crabtree's voice suddenly softened, the venom replaced by a hint of something almost pleasant. "You wouldn't happen to grow roses yourself, would you, officer?" He blinked, clearly thrown. No, ma'am. Not really. Well, let me tell you, the secret is Epsom salts. A tablespoon around the base of each plant in the spring. Magnesium sulfate, you see, encourages basal breaks. Stronger canes, more blooms. And don't forget to deadhead religiously, right down to the first 5-leaflet stem. Otherwise, you're just wasting the plant's energy." She puffed out her chest, her eyes gleaming. "I've won regional awards, you know." The officer nodded attentively, pulling out his notepad, though Lily doubted he was taking notes on rose cultivation. "That's good to know, ma'am." He cleared his throat. "So about the water." From the porch, Lily watched the scene unfold, a smile tugging at her lips. Mrs. Crabtree, momentarily sidetracked by her passion for horticulture, had seemingly forgotten her rage. The woman was a force of nature, that was for sure, even if that nature was a meticulously cultivated, slightly thorny rose garden. Peace restored. The patrol car finally pulled away, spitting gravel as it disappeared down the lane. Mrs. Crabtree stood stiffly, arms crossed, the embodiment of floral indignation. "Well," she huffed, then turned on her heel and marched back toward her perfectly manicured rose bushes. Lily sighed, the tension slowly draining from her shoulders. The absurdity of it all settled in, police officers mediating a dispute over sunflowers. She chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Time to get back to reality. The leaky pipe was her next target. Retrieving her wrench, she knelt, the familiar scent of damp earth filling her nostrils. A few careful turns, a tightening here and there, and finally, blessedly, the drip stopped. Silence, save for the gentle buzzing of bees amongst the sunflower heads. She leaned back, wiping her brow with the back of her hand, smearing dirt across her forehead. The sunflowers stood tall and proud, their faces turned toward the setting sun, a riot of gold against the azure sky. They weren't just flowers, she thought. They were defiance, resilience, a splash of untamed beauty in a world obsessed with order. And they were hers. The memory of Mrs. Crabtree's pinched face and accusatory finger flickered in her mind. Let her have her petunias and her roses. Lily had sunflowers, and today, that felt like a victory.